I started building our house with my wife around 18 months ago. I am an architect and I designed what I think is the perfect home for us, to meet our exact needs. We knew building it ourselves was going to be hard, as we did not have any real building experience, but we really did not have any other choice, although we did not realize how difficult and how long the process was going to be. After much thought, we decided to separate the first phase of the build in different stages, so we could focus on smaller and more doable areas, and tackle one after the other. The first one was the foundation beams. For that we had to self-learn how to do the groundwork, layout work, how to use an excavator, install pipes, build wooden forms, and pour and vibrate 2 full tracks of concrete. With the foundation already built, we continued building the next parts. First, the living room. It was the very first time we finished polished concrete, and the first time we actually used a power trowel, and it came out beautiful. After that, we formed and poured the concrete walls for the living room, which also came out great. With no rest time, we started finally building the floors of the house. We divided it in 6 different sections. We poured the first 3 ones in previous episodes. And after running through many months, building, working and editing videos all at the same time, we got to April, and we had only 1 month left to finish it all up, to be ready for the steel structure before the building permit will expire. So I decided to stop editing videos and focus only in building for a few months. Alright guys, it's 7 AM and I went to the building site, watered the floor we just poured a couple of days ago as it was still curing, and got all the tools ready by the time the concrete pump arrived. Do you hear what's coming? Eugenia was actually still walking Aspen, so she needed to rush up. For this pour, we're going to be screening with a big aluminum screeder that I bought recently. It is 6 meters long, just long enough to span from one side of the form to the other. The only problem is that we are only 2 people and just screeding itself is a 2-man job, plus you need to be in the middle, so we needed some help. So I asked a couple of neighbors, friends of us, to join for a few minutes and help us screed. Pouring concrete makes everyone very nervous, especially when you're trying to build it as a finished floor, because concrete is definitive. Any mistakes now, on this hot day, and the finish of our floor will be ruined. The radiant floor heating pipes are delicate, and you can easily damage them if you shoot concrete directly to it. So my idea was to lay the concrete hose on top of this blue insulation and pour it as slow as possible. Unfortunately, the concrete came very dry, and it was not getting underneath the pipes like we needed, so I asked to get more water into the mix so we could work with it a bit easily. My plan of pouring with the insulation protecting the radiant floor heating pipes did not really work as expected, and Cachola, the pump operator, asked me if he could just do it his own way and to trust him. The plan was to fill the first third of the floor, vibrate all the perimeter as it will later be exposed to the view, and screed the first section. If you don't vibrate a section that is gonna be exposed, then you get little holes in the concrete and they are not very nice. So since all the perimeter is gonna be exposed, I wanted to vibrate the perimeter very well. whilst Flora and me screeded. Eugenia was in the back making sure to add or remove concrete, so wherever she saw there was concrete missing, she would add some, pushing it with a rake, and wherever she saw there was too much concrete, then she would just remove a bit. Once that section was screeded nicely, we will fill another third and repeat the same process twice until we complete the floor. You can see here how now the concrete is way more liquid. It has more water and it is much easier to work with. You can screed it and level it with less effort, and if it is hot like that day that we had, it cures quick enough to finish the job quickly. I was seeing the cachola filled too much already, so I asked him to stop and to leave this corner empty, just because I wanted a place to put all the excess instead of throwing it out and making a mess all around the job. Here I was telling Se and Flor that we had two pipes in the middle, so we needed to hold the screed on one side while moving the other, and then go back and repeat the same process but holding it on the other side so we can screed around the pipes. Now I asked Cachola to finish filling up what was missing, and we finished the job. The screeding part took actually a little bit longer than I expected, and the first part of the floor that was poured with less water was drying very fast, and right when we finished screeding, I quickly went to pass the bull float. In this first corner I realized that the concrete was very dry already, as you can see here, so I already knew it was going to be a hard day to finish the concrete polish. The problem with adding water mid-pour was that once we stopped to add the water, we had already 1 cubic meter of concrete in place. So actually the hose itself, the concrete hose itself, has another cubic meter, so even if we added water, the first 2 cubic meters were dry, and 2 cubic meters was exactly 1/3 of the whole floor. Ideally, to get a polished finish, you want all the concrete curing more or less at the same pace, but in our case 1/3 of the floor was way drier than the other 2/3, so that was actually going to be a problem for later. I did pass the bull float in both directions while Eugenia worked on the perimeter. All the floors of the house are going to be polished concrete. I get asked a lot about this, and there are many reasons why, but the main ones are because it is a very durable material that will easily outlast us. It is actually one of the best materials to use for heating using radiant floor heating, as once it heats up it has a lot of mass, which gives it a lot of inertia, which it basically means that it will keep the heat for a very long time, not having to constantly heat it up, and also because we both think that it looks great. Obrigado. Thank you very much, guys. At this moment, if you are going to be putting tiles or wood on top of the concrete, then the job is almost done. You really just could leave it like this. But since we want to leave the concrete exposed as a finished floor, we need to work it a lot in order to close all the pores and make it as polished as possible. This is how the concrete looked after the bull float. And working the perimeter, just needed to wait for the concrete to cure for around 40 to 50 minutes. And that day was very hot, so it cured faster than usual. By the way, we do not add retardants or any kind of additive to our concrete. I saw someone in the comments of a previous episode replying to other viewers saying that we add retardants. Not sure how he thinks he knows what we do, but he definitely was not right on this one. Now we needed to start power troweling with the float pan. I think the key factor to achieve a perfect concrete finish is to know when to do each task, and it is something no one can really teach you until you do it yourself. You can hear advice in videos and comments. Some people throw coins at the floor and see if they bounce. Others, throw hammers at it. I personally like to gently put my finger somewhere I know it won't be seen later, like below a future wall, and push it a bit hard. And if I cannot push deeper than 3-4 millimeters or like 1/8 of an inch, then I bring the power trowel in and step on the concrete. Once you step in, you will clearly know if it's too wet or not. If you can walk without making a big mess, then I say it is ready. Again, especially for hot and windy days, you need it a little bit more wet, because if you panic out and get out and keep waiting for your feet to not to leave any marks, then, my friend, you lost the battle that day. Also, worst scenario, if you end up in a place where it's too wet, you can always stop the machine, get out, and come back a few minutes later. We had to actually do that later, and I will show you later in the video. Perfect, no? The float pan has two purposes. The first, it flattens all the area and makes it easier to later achieve a perfectly flat floor. And second, and very important for us in our hot climate, is that it helps bring concrete cream up to the surface. And if you don't bring it out now, then later will be very complicated to actually seal all the pores. This is especially important if you are pouring on a very hot and windy day like ours, which dries the surface of the concrete quickly, making it impossible to finish it off later. A tu izquierda del tirón. Ahí estamos. Tranquila. Ahí estamos. After a couple of passes and waiting a bit, we gave the first pass without the float pan, only with the blades. Everything was going smoothly until all of a sudden I saw a huge chunk of concrete getting stuck in a blade and came out exposing the rebar and the pipes. I mean, to be honest, I panicked a bit for a few seconds and tried closing it with the machine, going over it a few times, but I was doing more damage and making the hole bigger and bigger every time that I passed. So I decided to leave it and keep going over the rest of the floor and come back later and try to fix it by hand. Here is me trying to fix the hole by hand, hoping that it will be enough and that it will not be seen in the end. Una zona aquí que estaba súper mojada, mira. Y no, se me ha levantado.
¿El suelo?
Y no he pasado otra vez para intentar repararlo y no, es como que no se queda pegado. That day, after watching the footage at home, I realized that I was going too hard on this first pass with the blades, and that probably caused that issue. So I made sure to remember to go slow on the first passes on the next two pours.
Es que se está secando mucho la crema. Y están saliendo piedras.
Están saliendo muchas piedras hoy. In the end, everything got fixed and it came out 99% perfectly, but definitely adding water mid-pour made finishing it very complicated, because on some areas when we were passing it was dry enough to do it, and then by the time that we arrived to the place where it had more water, I was sinking in a little. So we have been running around like crazy to close all the pores and to close all the holes, and we successfully closed, I think, 99% of them. There are some areas where you can see that the concrete wasn't sealed 100%. And later today at some point I will need to cut the floor that we just did. We're gonna cut it right here. It was very hot today and I was wearing the sweatshirt earlier just because I got crazy sunburned, and every time that I get sunburned I use aloe, and next day I am golden, man. What's going on with the weather, man? It was raining like 1 week ago and we weren't able to pour because it was super wet, and all of a sudden it's like summer, like right away. We just poured the kitchen. It's gonna be an open kitchen, and also we're gonna have like island, and also probably like around the table with chairs around it to have dinner or to have lunch there. And the next one is going to be 2 bedrooms and one of the bathrooms and the corridor that goes to the main bedroom. And the 2 bedrooms that we're putting next are going to be one for maybe, you know, a child if the world doesn't end in 2 months, and the other one will be an editing room for us to have computer, like an office space. After that we will just be missing one more floor, which will be our room and our bathroom, which I'm going to form all together. So it's gonna be one more form job and 2 pours. And after that, guys, is a structure time. I'm trying to get Blocken to come to install it for us. I mean, I'm gonna help, of course. They have a crane and they have a team that they use for other clients, and I've seen it and it comes together like in a few days. So I've been speaking to Eugenia. We need to ask for price to see how much would it be. You know, if we do that, man, we will have the house, the structure of the house built in like a couple of weeks only. Alright, this was my beauty break for you guys. Three days later, I had the last forms of the house ready. I did not film myself doing that part because you have a lot of these in previous episodes. This portion here is a step on the concrete that we're gonna need for the sliding door of the main bedroom, and this area is our shower. We're gonna build the concrete a little bit lower so we can later create a slope and then waterproof it before finishing it. Second shower of the house, which is in this bathroom. You access it through here, and the same, we're gonna drop the concrete there and then create a slope all the way to the drain later on and waterproof it. I kept watering the recently poured concrete during 7 days, trying to keep it wet at all times, especially because we were getting 35-37 degrees already during middays, and it was very important for the concrete to cure slowly, so keeping it all the time wet helps a lot. A week later, Eugenia and I were able to insulate the floor, install the vapor barrier, and protect it with a geotextile fabric, and we were all ready for the steel rebars. That same day, Nuno and Felipe from Blocken came to visit us. We bought a Blocken steel structure for our house. They manufactured it a while ago and has been stored since then in their facilities. Initially, I planned on installing it all by my own, but during this time, I had seen several of their Instagram posts showing how fast their structures come up, and as we got closer to being ready for it, we wanted to talk to them about the possibility of getting them to help us with the installation. They came to see the concrete job and to discuss all the details, and a few days later they sent us the quote, and Eugenia and I agreed to it, so they will come to help install the structure. The install day was set for May 6th, so we only had a couple of weeks to finish the last 2 concrete pours before they arrived. And by the way, this is not a sponsor section. We are paying for their work. I am personally very grateful for all the help that they have been giving us during all this process, and I have become very good friends with them, especially with Felipe, that during the past years has been always ready to help me with any problems or doubts that I have had. I sometimes felt a bit alone during this build, but Felipe and Nuno from Blocken have been the biggest help we have had and really all we needed. I know Felipe is watching this, so thank you very much, man. In April 29th, we got all the rebars installed and lifted from the floor and started installing the Uponor radiant floor pipes. There will be a second manifold in this area that will fit 5 different zones, 1 for each room and 1 for each bathroom. During this time, we have become very good at making all the pipe circuits, and this time Eugenia helped me as we were running late on time in order to have everything ready to install the structure on May 13th. we had to schedule the last 2 pours 2 days apart. The first one was going to be on Monday, May 6th, and the second one 2 days later on Wednesday, May 8th. Our friends came to help again to screed, as they were super helpful last time. We were gifted with a very good overcasted day, not too hot, not too cold, and no rain whatsoever, and I decided to use long sleeves this time as I was not interested in getting burned again, but it was cool enough to wear it without any issues. That day was really the perfect pour. This is our 6th pour, and from not knowing anything in our first one to this one, there has been a long process, but we are now in a point where we know exactly what we are doing, what needs to be done, and how to interpret the concrete signs to know when to start each part. I think this is the most difficult part of concrete, as each day is completely different. Wind, temperature, humidity, and the concrete batch that you receive is always different, so you cannot rely just on time to know when to do things. You need to see how the concrete is developing in that specific day and act accordingly. If you are planning to do this by yourself, I will recommend you to start with a small section, with a small area, and not go too crazy and feel it out. It might get a little bit overwhelming the first time you do it, but as you do it, if you are able to learn by yourself, then you will get the gist of it very quickly. We saw that the concrete was getting dry already, so we brought the float pan and placed it on the concrete, but decided to check by standing on it before putting the machine. So just as expected, it was a bit too wet still, so I got out of there, cleaned the marks that I left with my feet by hand, and waited for another 5 minutes to test it again. After 10 minutes and a couple of tests, we came back and placed the machine on top of the pan. And gave it the first pass. I like to do this first pass perpendicular to the last pass that I did with the bull float. At this stage, the concrete is still somewhat wetter than what you would think it should be. As you can see, I'm leaving a lot of feet marks in it, but it is exactly how you need to pass the pan. Nevertheless, you always go backwards, so you clean up all the marks of your feet as you go. After a couple of passes with the float pan, I am now getting ready to pass the first time without the pan, only with the blades.
Ahí estamos.
The power trowel has two settings. One is an accelerator that you push to select the speed that you would like the blades to turn at, and the other setting is a knob that you rotate to bring the blades up or down, making them more flat or more vertical. This area we're doing now is where our office and extra room will be. The shared bathroom will be here, and this side on the back is the corridor to our room, and there will be a long skylight on top of the whole corridor. During the last pours, I learned by experience that it's better to keep the blades as flat as possible and go as slow as possible during the longest you can. If you are patient enough during the first passes and go slow and with the blades flat, you make a great foundation for the polishing part. This floor, as you can see, had a lot of pipes in between, and it was very difficult to get close to them with the machine. Firstly because I did not want to hit a pipe and move it or break it, and also because in some places the machine will simply don't fit. Once the concrete starts curing, you will clearly see that you are not closing the pores or that it is hard for you to close them. Then it is time for you to rotate the knob and set the blades more vertical and maybe push the gas a little bit harder. That of course only works if you get in on time and the concrete is not too hard already. I mean, if you get to it too late, then unfortunately you will need to add tiles or wood or whatever later on top, because you will not be able to leave it exposed. This is after a few passes. The surface is now much harder, and you can hear how the blades now sound even differently than before. And now is a good time to crank the blades up and push the gas to the maximum, so you start polishing the floor. After one of our previous episodes, someone said to me that we were doing it all wrong and that you don't polish the concrete at this stage, that you need to leave it rough and then sand it once it is finished. And although I know what he means and what that technique is, it is a completely different finish. What we are trying to do is polishing the concrete while curing, which leaves a smooth and uniform finish to it. I mean, if you do it like he suggested, just leaving the concrete to dry and then grinding it later, you will get a smooth surface. But all the stones of the concrete are exposed, so it's not like a uniform finish. You see little stones all over the place. I personally don't like that finish at all, but I have seen it used in some projects, so I guess it has its place. With that being said, we will also sand the concrete later. We plan on sanding it very lightly and right after it seal it so it becomes stain proof. Eugenia and I are always discussing if sealing it with a glossy finish or a matte one. I mean, we both like matte, but I think glossy makes the concrete looks much richer, like it is wet, you know, when you see it wet it looks fantastic. So I'm always in between both options. I'm wondering, what do you guys think? What do you recommend? Do we do it matte or glossy? As you can see, by the end of it the concrete was completely sealed, and now we were ready for the last one. Alright guys, it's been 2 days since we pour, and it's 6 a.m. right now and we are ready to pour the last floor. So after we finish this floor, the whole floor of the house will be done, and we will have finished what it seemed impossible at the beginning. After that, we are a little bit in a rush. We pour on Monday, today is Wednesday, and Blocken will be coming on Monday with the structure, so we can start installing the structure of the house. The floor is looking very good, as you can see, the floor that we did the other day. And I also did cut the line, but I didn't film myself just because I was extremely tired, and I already showed you how I did it there and there, so I didn't feel the need to bring the camera. And also yesterday I removed the form that was here, so we can pour this section, and this is the last portion. The weather app says that it's going to be around 30 degrees, which means that we are gonna be probably feeling like 35 or something like that. Not ideal for a concrete slab, to be honest, but it is what it is. I mean, we cannot wait any longer to do this, and I think the weather is just gonna get hotter and hotter every day, so it's pretty much now or never. And also we already scheduled on Monday with Blocken because they were going to be busy after a few weeks, so it was either we do this now and get them here on Monday, or we would have needed to wait for a couple of months. It is 10 minutes to 8, so the pump should arrive anytime soon. I have put this plastic here just to protect this concrete that is not really cured yet. It's only been 2 days, so we're gonna try not to damage it as much as possible. And yeah, it's a matter of waiting and for the pump to arrive. And then we also have 2 friends coming again to help screed the whole thing. So yeah, let's see. It's gonna be very hot today. This last pour was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. It got very hot that day, and although we already knew it and we were prepared to do it all quickly and nicely, it was very complicated. Initially the concrete came out great. I requested a more watery consistency, and the first part was just the perfect concrete to work with. But all of the sudden a huge chunk of watery concrete came out. You can see it here. I mean, I'm not too sure what happened. We told them not to add any water to the mix during the pour because, as I already explained in the video and explained then, it makes it very difficult to finish it once you mix 2 different concretes. But for some reason they did regardless without really consulting us, and it was very close to ruin the floor later when we were trying to finish it. It was so hot that day that we didn't have to wait too long for the concrete to be ready for the power trowel. Alright, we believe that half of it is dry, just because, I don't know why, but the cachola decided to put water mid-pour, and we told him expressly, we told him not to do it, but he did it anyways. So we have half of the slab is dry and half of the slab is wet. The first half, you see how it goes. The first portion of the floor was ready to go and the rest was extremely wet, so I decided to jump in and start working where it was dry enough. And once I got to a place that was dangerously too wet, I stopped the machine right there and waited for a bit longer. If you make a mistake and end up going in a place that is extremely wet, then the machine sinks in and you make a hole in the floor. So I was risking it a little bit, but I had really no other choice.
Esa zona no está muy mojada y aquella tampoco.
Pero
Claro,
allí mira lo que te pasa.
Yeah.
Yo no sé qué hacer, la verdad.
Eh?
Yo no sé qué hacer.
Alright, we're gonna stop here just because over that area is already too wet. And I'm gonna do it again maybe in like 5 minutes.
The problem was that the first part was drying much faster than the rest, and you know, we needed to do something. After a few minutes, we could see how the drier part was drying too much, and we were risking to be able to not to finish it all up nicely. So I took the risk again to continue. I went ahead and finished passing the machine over the wetter areas, trying not to step on the concrete, staying on the perimeter, and leaving the machine do its own thing. This situation brought a lot of unnecessary stress to us on the very last part of the house. I mean, we had to use all we had learned during the previous month to save this one. If this would have happened on our first pour, I am almost confident that I will not have tried again, because I can guarantee you that it would have been a major disaster. Luckily, we were no longer newbies at this. I might not charge myself for this work or do it for anybody else in exchange of money, but we have gotten so good at it that not charging money is really the only difference between pro concrete crews and us, and also that Eugenia is much better looking than any other concrete workers out there. Jokes apart, that day we were very close to complete disaster. It might not look like it in the video, because when shit hits the fan, we stopped caring about the camera and focused 100% on the task at hand. So there is not much footage of the disasters we averted. In the end, after dozens of passes, playing chess with the concrete, coming from one side and then pausing and then going to the other side, changing the blade's inclination and speed constantly as I was hitting drier or wetter areas, and really having a mental battle against the floor that day, we succeeded. After 1 year? 1 year and a half, we're ready for the structure.